The thing about outsourcing or making things in another country cheaper and then bringing them into another country to sell them, before there was a big problem with that. And that was tariff barriers, because you made your products maybe cheaper, but to bring them in to the country you want to sell them in, you had to pay tariffs, which kind of took out a lot of the benefit of manufacturing. And then came what? Free trade. Free trade. What is free trade? It's freedom to exploit. So what these families did, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, who were two of those families, so are the British royal family, they introduced something called the World Trade Organization, the WTO, which can impose massive fines on countries that defend their own economies, right? From the merciless world system of free trade. Everyone knows free trade's good. No, it's freedom to exploit trade. It's good for you, darling, you guy over there in the banker's suit, but it's not good for these people who are living in starvation wages. And as a result of that, if you try to defend yourself from these imports made more cheaply on the backs of exploitation of people, then you can get now fined by the World Trade Organization. So what's happened is the downside of exploitation in one country and selling in another has been taken away. And then we come to this word that has become part of the language now, globalization. What is globalization? I say to the people who go on globalization protests and all the rest of it, and good luck to them, but what is it? It's the centralization of global power in every area of our lives. It's centralizing decision making. And what does that do? Centralizing decision making and control over the media, politics, economics, all of it. It gives power at the center to a tiny few so they can control everybody else. And I see globalization protests, and like I say, good luck to them. But I hear people talking about the fact that it's greedy corporations that are behind it. No. Greedy corporations are the vehicle for globalization. They're not the origin of it. Because of the pyramidal structure I'm talking about, this corporation is a pyramid in itself. Obviously, there's lots of people working for it here, and it gets thinner and thinner. Eventually, you got the people running that corporation. Right, bang. And you got the same here with another corporation, and the same here with another corporation. And all these pyramid points in these corporations are going to the same capstone. So we see Bank of America, we see JP Morgan, we see, if we have to, Goldman Sachs. But what we're looking at are different names on the same force, different masks on the same face. You know, you can go down to a mall and you can see companies that apparently, stores that are apparently in competition with each other. Oh, I'm not going there. I had a bad time there. I'm going to buy from them now. Well, actually, just look at the background. They're owned by the same people, and it's like very symbolic when you walk through a mall and you see different names at the top of the shops, over the shop fronts. But actually, so many of them, enormous numbers of them, are owned by the same people. And that's what is happening globally. I'm extraordinarily optimistic, because I say this control system's coming down.
Absolutely.
But it's coming down when people remove the backside from the sofa, remove the focus from the game show and the sports, and start looking at what we really need to focus on, which is how basic freedoms are being taken away. And if we think it's happening now and it's terrible now, what's going on, then just have a look at what your children and grandchildren are going to experience if this thing goes on. Like I said earlier, the target population is vast. The people doing it is tiny in full knowledge of what they're doing. And there's that wonderful scene in that animated movie A Bug's Life, where the basic story, for those who haven't seen it, though it's very well known, is that these grasshoppers, just a few, intimidated these massive number of ants on what they called Ant Island to spend the year gathering food for the grasshoppers to come once a year and take it. And on one occasion, one ant stood up to the grasshoppers and said, this is not right, this is not fair, and it's not just. And the next scene is that the grasshoppers are in their, what they call their winter quarters. They're in a tree. And they've got all the food they need for the winter. And one or two of them say to the leader, we don't have to go back to Ant Island this year and get more food, because we've got all the food we need. And he makes this speech telling the grasshoppers the facts of life if the few are going to control the many. And he talked about this one ant that stood up to him, and one of the grasshoppers, yeah, boss, but it's just one ant. Oh, just one ant, eh? And he explains what happens when just one ant becomes lots and lots of ants. And there's this great line where he said, those little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. So we've reached a point now where people in very, very large and gathering numbers have realized there's a problem. They've realized the world isn't like they thought it was. And I know I've been to 51 countries researching and speaking about this, and I've seen it. It's a global phenomenon. It's not happening in one area, it's happening everywhere. But we have to take this to the next stage now, because if you look at the internet and all these different forms of communication, you can see that there is a very large, increasingly vast body of people who've realized that a few are controlling the many, and that there is an agenda to make it even more draconian as we go along, more Orwellian, beyond Orwellian actually. But they're still, if you like, standing on the other side of the road, watching it all unfold across the street, and they're like going, what's going to be their next move? Oh, look, they're doing that. I told you they'd do that next, didn't I? I told you. And it's like people are standing there sort of watching their own prison being built. They're more aware of it. They now know it's a prison, but they're still watching. And what we need now is to cross the street. Instead of saying, this is what's happening and what's their next move, we should be saying, what's our next move? Never mind what their next move, what's our next move? Because a tiny few, possibly 4% of the population, are probably massively overestimating with 4%. But you say it's 4% of the population of 7 billion are controlling 7 billion. That's insane. They can do it two ways. One, because they do it secretly. And up to this point, they've done that. You know, people do not rebel against not being free when they think they are. And people tend to sweep through life and they pick up images rather than substance and detail. And so we think we live in a democracy, and then we equate democracy with freedom. What democracies are in their present state are elected dictatorships, or in terms of George Bush in 2004, not elected dictatorships, but it's another story. And so what happens? You have an election campaign, someone wins. And then they have told the public what they're going to do. But there's no contract. They've just told public what they're going to do. Why did they tell them that? They told them what they thought they needed to tell them to get the votes to win.
What they want to hear, basically.
Yes. Then along comes Barack Obama, Mr. Change. Sorry, I hadn't noticed. You're going to close Guantanamo Bay within a year, wasn't he? I think he was. And he was gonna be change. Well, you know, change has obviously got a new definition now. Its new definition is business as usual, because that's what we've had. Obama's Wall Street's man. That's why he's doing all these things to benefit Wall Street, while Wall Street are screwing the population. But he then told a pack of lies in his election campaign. Why? To get elected. And then what happens is they tell you lies, they get elected, then they do as they like. And then now what we're seeing now, oh, it's the midterm elections. I'm going to go for the Republicans this time because I don't like what these... Hold on a second. Deep breath. This is how it works in America. This is how it works in Britain. This is the way it works all over the world. During the Bush administration, Boy Bush was demonstrably, provably, in the mainstream media, controlled by a group of people called neocons, neoconservatives, right? And these were the Richard Pearls and the William Crystals and the John Boltons and all these people, and the Wolfowitz and all these people. And then Obama took over, and he is controlled by what I call the democons. This is your George Soros's, your Zbigniew Brzezinski's, and all these people, your Rahm Emanuel's. Don't buy a new car off that guy, never mind a used one. And so you've got puppet A, Republican, puppet B, Democrat, democons, neocons, same force, right? So you can vote for the Democrats, you can vote for the Republicans, it doesn't matter, because whatever you do, you're voting for them. And they're the ones you don't see. And that's why the differences in politics today worldwide are not in reality, they're not in substance, they're not in change for the benefit of the population, they're in rhetoric. Because the Republicans and the Democrats in America, as an example, are masks on the same face, the only way they can persuade people they have a choice at an election is to do it by rhetoric, by words, to try to say we're different because. But as we've seen, at a point in American history where on the surface a massive change was going to take place when Obama came in. Change. But you notice, he never said what that change was. He was never specific. Why? Because if he had been, he'd have been in trouble. So it was a massive mind game on the American psyche